It's strange how quickly peace can turn into something else. One second, it's a quiet afternoon on a tree-lined street. The next, 3 squad cars are pulling up to your front yard like you're a threat to national security. I remember that moment exactly, not because of the sirens. Not even because of the officers who stepped out with their hands near their holsters. I remember it because of my niece, sitting cross-legged on the lawn, gently picking petals from a flower like she always did, quiet, focused, unbothered. And then she looked up and everything in her body locked, frozen, overwhelmed. She didn't scream, didn't cry, she just stopped. Because her brain couldn't process what her heart knew, something was wrong and it was coming for her. Before I get into what happened next, do me one thing. Drop your city in the comments. We're pulling stories like this from all over the country, and what happened to my niece? It's happening more often than you think. The cops approached slowly, hands open, calm voices, but I saw it in their eyes they were working off bad intel. One step toward her, kneeling. "Hey, sweetheart, what's your name? Can you hear me?" She didn't answer, didn't move. That's how her autism presents. She shuts down under stress, especially when strangers talk too fast or stand too close. I stepped forward. "She's okay. She's not a threat. She's just scared." Another officer turned to me. "We got a report of a child behaving erratically, possibly in distress. A neighbor said she might be on something." "She's autistic," I said flatly, and that neighbor was lying. The first cop hesitated. Then his partner started toward her again. That's when I said it. "Officer, I strongly suggest you stop where you are." He blinked. "Sir, I need you to stand back." I nodded slowly and tucked the corner of my jacket just enough to flash the badge clipped to my belt. Undercover Field Unit Detective A. Rivera. Verified, not local, not visible, but very real. He stepped back. Now rewind 3 days, because this didn't start with police lights. It started with a note, slipped under my door, folded twice. No envelope. "Several neighbors have expressed concern about the girl. She stares. She doesn't respond. She's been seen walking alone in circles. Please keep her indoors for the comfort of the community." No name, just the HOA logo at the top. That was the moment I knew exactly what kind of neighborhood this was. My name is Alex Rivera. I'm a detective with a regional undercover crimes division. We handle public corruption, housing discrimination, and civil abuse operations. But for the last few weeks, I wasn't working. My niece Lily had come to stay with me after her mom, my sister, had a health scare. We weren't sure how long she'd be here, so I paused field work. Figured a quiet suburb would be the perfect place to give her some stability. I figured wrong. Lily's autism makes certain things difficult. She doesn't always make eye contact. Sometimes she repeats words under her breath. And when she's stressed, she paces in straight lines, sometimes for hours. But she's smart, gentle, creative. Her world is just different, not broken. But HOA boards don't like different, they like quiet. Obedient, predictable. And Lily wasn't any of those things. The first complaint was about unsupervised loitering. She was in the front yard, walking in a pattern, tracing the sidewalk edge with a leaf in her hand. I was inside, 5 feet away, watching her through the window. Still, violation notice. Second complaint. Refusal to respond when greeted by neighbors. She was nonverbal that day. I explained that. Didn't matter. Third complaint. Aggressive body language. That one made my blood boil, because Lily wasn't aggressive. She was standing still. But that's the thing about fear, it doesn't need facts, just a whisper. I went to the HOA president the next day. Her name was Sharon Caro, mid-50s, buttoned up, eyes that smiled while her mouth twisted with condescension. She greeted me like I was a delivery guy. "Hi there, can I help you?" I said it plainly. "You filed 3 false complaints about my niece. That ends now." "I'm sorry," she said, "but I don't file the complaints, the board does. I just enforce them." "You're the president." "Yes, but we have a process. She's a child with autism." "We understand that, but—" "No, you don't." Her smile froze. I didn't threaten, didn't flash the badge, didn't raise my voice. But I made sure she knew. "You're walking a fine line, Miss Caro. And the next step you take better be in the right direction." She didn't say a word. Just folded her arms, and in that moment I knew she was going to escalate. The next day, Lily was sitting on the curb with her headphones in. I let her do that when she needs space. I was 10 feet away, raking leaves. A car slowed as it passed. It was Sharon, window down, sunglasses on. She stared. Lily didn't notice, but I did. I nodded once, didn't wave, didn't smile, just let her know I saw, and the next morning the cops came. Most people think justice happens fast, that when something's wrong, you raise your voice, flash a badge, and everything snaps into place. But real justice, it's slow, patient. It waits in silence while the enemy exposes themselves. So after the cops showed up that afternoon, I didn't rage. I didn't demand anything. I let them run their play. And just like I expected, they showed up with the wrong information. Possible mental episode, one of the officers said. Welfare check. Someone said the girl was threatening herself. I almost laughed. She's autistic, I repeated. Nonverbal under stress. She wasn't hurting anyone, she was picking flowers. She wasn't responsive when we called out to her. She shuts down under pressure. That's not danger, that's disability. They looked at each other, one of them glanced at the squad car. What's your name again? The younger one asked. I raised my hand, lifted my shirt just enough to show the badge clipped to my hip. Detective Rivera. Field Division, and you're being played. That froze them. The older officer exhaled slowly, his tone changed. Sorry, we didn't know, we got a report, said she might be on substances, you know how it is. Yeah, I said flatly. I do. I also know when a fake report turns into a civil rights violation. He nodded. We'll note it, you need backup with the board. No, I said. I need time. Once they left, I brought Lily inside. She was quiet. Her eyes darted, lips parted, but she wasn't panicked. She was processing. I knelt in front of her. You're okay, I said. You didn't do anything wrong. She blinked slowly, then looked out the window. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, bad people don't like me. My chest tightened. She wasn't wrong. That night, I opened my case binder. I wasn't on active duty, but I'd kept my tools sharp: digital recorder, pen camera, encrypted backup drive, micro drone no bigger than a coin. It was time to start collecting. I didn't go to Sharon. I went to the vice president of the HOA, a man named Donald Price, retired firefighter. Known in the neighborhood, the kind of guy who didn't like confrontation unless he felt outnumbered. I caught him watering his lawn. Hey, Don, I said casually. He looked up, a little startled. Detective, so you knew, he swallowed. Sharon told us after the police visit. Said you tried to intimidate the board. I smiled politely. You believe that? I don't know what to believe, he said. Look, she says your niece. My niece is 10 years old, nonverbal and harassed. I didn't say I agree, he cut in. I said, I don't know what to believe. That was enough, because uncertainty cracks alliances. The next morning, flyers appeared on mailboxes, bright red, HOA header, unregistered minor living in home, community concern, no names, no addresses, but it was about Lily. Everyone knew. I got 3 texts from neighbors who were angry but scared. She's going too far. We didn't vote for this. Is this even legal? They didn't know it yet, but Sharon had just overplayed her hand. I sent an anonymous message to the HOA email account. Board is violating ADA. Multiple families affected. Investigation coming. The response, silence. Until 3 hours later, a white SUV parked across from my house. Tinted windows, didn't move for hours. They were watching me now. I activated the micro drone, launched it just past dusk. Set it to hover 20 feet above the HOA clubhouse. Audio was muffled by wind, but I caught just enough. Sharon, he's watching. We can't mess up again. Someone check his license. Is he even really a cop? We can't have another incident in front of the girl. Next time, we need someone else to call it in. Anonymous. They were preparing another strike, but this time they'd make it look like it didn't come from them, so I set the trap. Want to know what happened next? Well, before we dive in, if you're enjoying this story and love such dramas, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber keeps me motivated to dig deeper, uncover more wild stories, and bring you even crazier content. Your support means everything. It's what keeps this channel going strong. And trust me, there's plenty more chaos coming your way. Back to the story. That weekend, I let Lily play in the sprinkler out front, headphones on, rainbow sandals, her favorite toy fox in one hand. I stayed inside, windows open, watching through the screen. It took 45 minutes. A gray sedan pulled up down the block. A woman stepped out, not Sharon, not anyone I recognized, sunglasses, hair in a bun, phone in hand. She walked past, then doubled back, stopped, dialed. I recorded everything. 10 minutes later, sirens, another welfare check. But this time I was ready. I walked out as the cruiser arrived, camera in hand. Before the officer said a word, I asked, "Can I ask who filed this report?" He paused. "It was called in anonymously." Concern for the child's well-being. Did they mention autism? No. Why? I handed him my card. He read it, froze, then looked at Lily. Then at the woman standing across the street, suddenly turning away, walking fast. I lowered my voice. If you respond to one more false report without logging this as harassment, I'll bring this case directly to Internal Affairs. He didn't argue, he just nodded, tipped his hat, and left. Lily never flinched. She just stood in the sprinkler, smiling. She was getting used to it. And that made me furious. Later that night, I printed the photo, the woman with the phone, the timestamp, the vehicle. Then I slipped it under Sharon's door. No note, no threat, just a message. You're not anonymous and you're out of time. Sharon Caro didn't say a word, not publicly. Not in email threads, not even in HOA meetings. But the silence was loud, because when someone like Sharon stops talking, it's not because they're backing down. It's because they're covering their tracks, and she had a lot to cover. The morning after I slid the photo under her door, everything changed. The HOA website went into maintenance mode. 3 posts about community safety concerns were removed from the bulletin board outside the clubhouse, and the red flyers gone. Vanished from every mailbox and yard within hours. She was erasing the paper trail. But she didn't know I'd already backed up everything, screenshots, emails, voicemails, meeting recordings, all archived, all timestamped, all duplicated across 3 devices. I didn't make my move yet. Instead, I visited Donald Price again, the vice president. He answered with tired eyes. She's losing it, he said before I even spoke. Is that why the flyers disappeared? He nodded. She said they were misinterpreted. She's afraid of legal blowback. She should be. Donald stepped aside and lowered his voice. You need to know something. At the last closed board meeting, she said something about calling someone from outside the HOA, some kind of consultant. What kind of consultant? I don't know, he said, but she used the word containment. And she wasn't talking about trash bins. That night, the cameras went dark. All 4 motion-activated cameras I had installed around my home blacked out at the same time, 2:34 a.m., not disabled, scrambled. It took me 5 minutes to restore the feed. Nothing was stolen. Nothing touched. But the message was clear. We can reach you. That was the first real mistake they made, because that took this beyond HOA politics. That made it federal. I filed a formal notice with the Department of Civil Rights investigation. Flagged it under targeted harassment of a disabled minor, coordinated neighborhood action. I didn't name myself in the complaint. Didn't need to. They traced the footage, the reports, the escalating complaints, and Sharon's name was on all of it. 2 days later, a woman named Mara Jenkins arrived in the neighborhood, tall, sharp, designer blazer. She introduced herself as a community standards consultant from a private HOA consulting firm. She met with Sharon at the clubhouse. No minutes posted, no announcements made. Just a closed-door session that ran nearly 3 hours. I had eyes on the whole thing from across the street, and more importantly, I had ears. The drone mic caught it all. Sharon, he's collecting evidence. Everything. I can't risk the board getting sued. Mara, you don't need to win in court, you need to win the narrative. Sharon, what does that mean? Mara, you paint him as aggressive, as unstable. You reframe the issue. You're not targeting the girl, you're protecting the neighborhood from a hostile man with a badge and no restraint. Sharon, he hasn't even raised his voice. Mara, that's the beauty of it. You don't need truth, just suggestion. That was it. That was the game plan. They weren't going to back off. They were going to flip the story, turn me into the problem, make it about fear, about power. About twisting perception just enough to survive the fallout. And if I let them do it, they'd win, so I flipped it back. The next day, I filed a second complaint. But this one wasn't anonymous. This one had my name on it, badge number, agency contact. And it went straight to the State Attorney General's office. Attached were all audio and visual documentation, HOA meeting logs, drone recordings of the consultant, redacted witness statements from neighbors, the officer body cam footage from both fake welfare checks. I called it systematic harassment of a neurodivergent minor by local governance authority, and this time they answered at 6:03 p.m. Sharon Caro received a formal letter of pending investigation, hand-delivered, signed, stamped. The HOA board was notified that any further action taken against me or my niece would be considered retaliatory and subject to additional legal review. She didn't take it well. That night, someone egged my truck. Then my mailbox was knocked over. Again, only this time, they left a note. This is what happens when rats think they're kings. But they forgot about the new camera I'd set up inside the neighbor's garden across the street. I had everything: license plate, face, delivery, timestamp, and the person responsible was on the HOA board. The next morning I printed the photo, delivered it to Sharon again. No words, no warning, just truth. 3 hours later, the entire neighborhood received an emergency email, effective immediately. HOA President Sharon Caro is taking a leave of absence. Vice President Donald Price will assume temporary leadership. We appreciate your patience and commitment to a safe, united community. Translation: she knew the hammer was coming, and she ducked, but I wasn't done. Because the consultant Mara Jenkins, she didn't just work with Sharon. She worked with 15 other HOAs across the state, and this wasn't the first time her name showed up in a complaint involving disabled residents. That's when I realized this was bigger than our street. This was a pattern. You can't cut out rot if you don't dig beneath the surface. And after Sharon Caro took her quiet leave, most of the neighborhood thought the story was over. But I'd been in this game too long to believe that. When a power figure steps down without a fight, it's not surrender, it's shielding something bigger. That something was named Mara Jenkins. And she wasn't just an HOA consultant. She was part of a statewide network quietly advising neighborhood boards on how to remove unfit residents, target families that didn't blend in, and more importantly, protect themselves legally while doing it on paper. Mara was clean. But behind the scenes, she was the ghostwriter of modern neighborhood oppression. I started digging, pulled all the consulting logs and digital traces from the HOA website backup, files I'd copied before Sharon took them down. Buried deep in the HTML was a link to a private login portal. Behind that, an entire playbook, PDF files with titles like Creating Justifiable Discomfort Using Compliance Reports as Leverage, Managing the Narrative. When the target has power, it was sick, professional, weaponized bureaucracy. And my niece had been test case #47. I sent the documents to the AG's office, but I didn't stop there. I mapped out every HOA that had worked with Mara in the last 3 years, 15 neighborhoods, 7 formal complaints, 3 lawsuits, all quietly settled. One family had been forced to sell their home after their son, who was deaf, was labeled aggressive by an HOA member. Another woman with cerebral palsy was cited for improper sidewalk use because her wheelchair damaged grass. And the worst part, Mara hadn't been fired from any of them. She'd been promoted. The state attorney general issued an expansion of my case into a full civil investigation. Now it wasn't just about Lily. It was about a pattern of systemic discrimination hidden behind HOA rules and strategic consulting. But Mara wasn't going quietly either. At 3:12 a.m. one night, I received a phone call from a blocked number. I didn't answer, but the voicemail came through, a woman's voice, calm, controlled. "You're not investigating. You're interfering. I don't care who you work for, you're making enemies, and enemies get replaced." Click. 2 hours later, a public post appeared on the neighborhood Facebook group, concerned about an unstable individual using his badge to harass board members and endanger residents. HOA requests support in petitioning for his removal. No name, but everyone knew who it was about. 3 likes. 12 angry comments, 37 shares. That's how disinformation works: quiet, viral, strategic. But what Mara didn't realize is, I'd already set the bait. The post was a trap, and I'd set up monitoring through a burner account to track the IPs of everyone who clicked and commented. 2 accounts traced directly to Mara's consulting firm, another to a private PR agency in Atlanta. They weren't just making noise, they were using reputation warfare. That's when I made the next call, this time to a federal contact. Not DHS, not ICE, DOJ Civil Rights Division. Within 48 hours, DOJ reps landed in state and requested access to my files. They confirmed Mara's firm had been on a short list of flagged operations connected to neighborhood filtration initiatives. In plain English, HOAs were being coached to filter out anyone who didn't fit a visual or behavioral mold: elderly, disabled, neurodivergent, people of color, immigrants. And what started as safety protocols had morphed into a legalized discrimination machine. Lily wasn't the first. But I was determined she'd be the last. The next HOA board meeting was the first one under Don Price's leadership. No private guards, no consultants, just folding chairs, lukewarm coffee, and a quiet tension hanging in the air. I showed up late, intentionally. Everyone turned when I entered. Not because they didn't expect me, but because they didn't know what version of me was showing up. I stepped to the front, dropped a folder on the table. "Before you proceed," I said calmly, "you should know the Attorney General's office is opening a full review of your prior enforcement decisions, and the DOJ is watching." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A woman near the front raised her hand. "Is this about Lily?" I turned to her. "No. It's about all of you, about what happens when silence becomes compliance, when neighbors stop asking questions and start pretending discrimination is just policy." The room went still. I pulled out a printed copy of Mara's containment guide, held it up. "This was your consultant's blueprint, not safety, not harmony. Containment. You used it on my niece. Who's next?" No one spoke, so I left it on the table, turned, and walked out. That night Lily slept peacefully, no pacing, no humming, just rest. And in the stillness of that evening I realized this war wasn't just about HOA abuse. It was about exposing the system beneath it, the kind that hides behind rules, behind concerns, behind a smile and a clipboard. Mara Jenkins built her career on silence, silent pressure, silent compliance, silent removals. No police reports, no media attention, just paperwork, whispers, and community standards. But the thing about silence is, once you break it, it never echoes the same again. Within a week of the board meeting, Mara's operation started to unravel. Her firm's name was now part of a joint review between the DOJ and the State Civil Rights Task Force. I didn't know all the details. They kept that sealed, but I heard enough. Subpoenas were issued, client records pulled. At least 4 HOA boards had filed sudden disassociation notices. And in the middle of all that, I got a visit. A black SUV parked outside my home, middle of the day, federal plates. 2 agents stepped out, not loud, not hostile, just direct. They introduced themselves as part of DOJ Civil Rights, the federal division now taking over the investigation. "We want you to testify," one of them said. "Testify in what?" "In the first of several public hearings. HOA misuse of power, systemic discrimination. We've never had a case this clear, and your evidence, it's airtight." I didn't hesitate. "Tell me where and when." But Mara, she wasn't done yet. That night my sister, Lily's mom, called me in tears. "I just got a call from some woman," she said. "Private number. She said she could help us move out quietly, help Lily settle somewhere less scrutinized." My stomach turned. "She said it would be safer if we just avoided the fight." I asked, "Did she give a name?" "No, but she knew details about Lily, her meds, her triggers, things I never told anyone outside the family." That's when I realized they'd accessed Lily's medical records illegally. I called the DOJ immediately. They traced the number to a burner phone, unregistered, but pinged near one of Mara's known business addresses in the past month. That was enough. They added HIPAA violation and data privacy abuse to her growing list of offenses. Meanwhile, I prepared for the hearing. It was held in a county hall 2 towns over, plain building, fold-out tables, rows of chairs. But the room was packed, press, victims, lawyers, and right in the front row, Mara Jenkins. She wore black, hair pinned, not a single emotion on her face. But her eyes, they scanned me like I was the threat, and I was. I testified for 47 minutes, laid it out clean, no dramatics, no flourishes, just facts. 2 false police reports against Lily, HOA pressure letters, consultant-led intimidation playbooks, audio recordings from the drone medical record breach targeting my family. By the end, no one was looking at me. They were looking at Mara, and for the first time, she blinked. Later that night, I received one final message, email, no subject: "You've won the room, but this system doesn't die in court, it dies in the shadows, and you just made yourself very visible." That was Mara's real power, not legality, fear. But fear only works on people with something to lose, and I'd already made peace with mine. 2 days later, the DOJ froze Mara's consulting license. Her firm's website was taken down, and a class action lawsuit was filed on behalf of 9 families, including us. She went underground after that. No press, no response. But the damage was done. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood changed. Not overnight, not dramatically, but quietly. Sharon's name was stripped from all HOA records. New bylaws were posted, ones that actually protected disabled residents. Neighbors started waving again. Lily's name wasn't whispered anymore, it was defended. And Don Price, he stepped down a month later, said he was tired. But I think he just saw too much of the truth. Then something happened I didn't expect. One of the former HOA board members, the one who egged my truck, stopped by mid-40s. Nervous, he held out an envelope. "I never apologized," he said. "This doesn't fix anything, but maybe it shows I see it now." Inside, a handwritten letter. And a picture Lily had drawn of a fox standing in a garden. He'd found it on the ground that day and kept it. "I thought it was just scribbles," he said. "Now I know it was her voice. And that's what people never get. People like Lily, they don't need to fit into matter. They don't need to be understood to be respected. They just need space to exist, and someone willing to fight for that space when the world tries to take it. Some people think justice is a finish line, a slam of the gavel, a headline, a resignation letter. But if I've learned anything from this fight, it's that justice isn't an ending, it's a start. After Mara's license was frozen, she disappeared from public view. Her name scrubbed from company records. Her firm rebranded and sold to a shell company in another state. Classic move. But the DOJ was smarter than that. They weren't trying to chase her. They were building a case that would outlast her and my testimony. It triggered something way bigger than I imagined. 2 weeks after the hearing, I got a message, encrypted, from an internal DOJ liaison. It was short. "Thought you should know you weren't the only one. This week, we opened Phase 2. Attached was a report. Operation Quiet Code's a federal review of over 110 HOAs across 6 states, all connected through anonymous consulting networks and community management affiliates. Dozens of neighborhoods, hundreds of complaints, same patterns: isolate, discredit, force out. Lily was just one name on a list that stretched 12 pages long. It was hard to read. Families bullied out of homes. Children labeled threats for having tics, stimming, or simply wandering too far. In one case, an 84-year-old veteran with early-stage dementia was served a fine for menacing lawn behavior. It wasn't enforcement. It was soft cleansing, discrimination disguised as order. The DOJ moved fast. They launched a website to collect national reports. News broke within days. Headlines ran on every outlet: HOA war. Feds uncover hidden network behind forced removals. The clean neighborhood lie. Families speak out. When standards become weaponized, and in the center of it all, a name. Mine. Not because I asked, not because I wanted credit, but because I refused to be quiet. I thought that would be the end of it, but then something happened, something small, something that still gets me. I was sitting on the porch with Lily one evening. She was stacking stones, her favorite thing lately: quiet, focused. Her fox plush tucked under her elbow. A kid from 2 houses down walked over, must have been 7, maybe 8. He stood there for a second, then said, "Can I help?" Lily didn't answer. She just looked up, then slid a stone over, slowly, carefully. The boy sat beside her. They didn't talk. Didn't need to, but they built a tower together, and no one told them to stop. That night I realized the fight wasn't about laws, it wasn't about headlines, it was about that tower. About whether a little girl with a quiet voice could sit in her own yard, next to someone who didn't understand her, and still be safe. Weeks passed. Then months. The HOA board was reshuffled, new leadership, new transparency. They even invited families with special needs to speak at the next 3 meetings and actually listened. Lily's name stopped being whispered in discomfort. It became a name kids knew, neighbors knew, people respected. Because now they understood, and once you understand, you can't unsee. One day I found an envelope taped to my front door. No stamp, no name, just a note inside. "You did more than protect her. You reminded all of us that peace without justice is just silence." And taped beside it, a simple hand-drawn picture: Lily and her fox, standing in the yard, smiling. But I want you to hear me on this, because here's the part nobody tells you. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. What happened to us is happening everywhere. Right now, somewhere in this country, a family is getting that letter. A child is being labeled unwelcome. And someone with a clipboard and a smile is already planning their removal. So before you scroll past this, answer me one thing. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Because we're building something bigger now, not just a story, not just a channel. A community that doesn't blink when power acts cruel, it pushes back. Lily taught me that, and now we're teaching it forward.